The fate of the Huguenots, 1598–1685. Louis XIII became a king at the age of 8. Cardinal Richelieu, who was the chief minister of France, helped him in ruling. He was the power behind the throne. The cardinal placed the need of the nation above the privileges of its most important groups. This doctrine was called raison d'etat. But there were three obstacles to that stabilization. The Huguenots shared the state, the nobles conducted themselves as if they were not subjects, and the most powerful governors in the province acted as sovereign in their office. The nobility of sword was replaced by professional soldiers at war and professional administrators at the government. Richelieu used intendants in order to limit the power of local officials and to control their conduct and administration. The cardinal wanted to challenge the Huguenots' autonomy. In 1621, England tried to help the Huguenots, but Richelieu and Louis XIII abolished the Huguenots' privilege altogether. They were allowed to maintain their religion, but without special status. The king's wife was Queen Anne of Austria. The only night they spent together is when Louis XIV was conceived. After the death of Louis XIII and of the cardinal, there was again a king child, Louis the Grand. He came to the throne at the age of 5, and Cardinal Jules Mazarin, the next chief minister, was the one who helped him. The cardinal was very rich and was a good administrator. At the end of the 30 Years' War, he refused a peace with Spain, but his goal was to deliver a knockout blow of the Habsburgs. The king and his ministers. There was a rebellion because of Mazarin's power. Jean Colbert and Marquis de Louvis were the ones who held the money and might. The first one built the French navy, reformed the French legal codes, and established national academies, chief of Minister of Finance. The second one reformed the French army. The number of soldiers increased to 400,000. Louvis introduced new ranks for the field officers and solved one of the most serious logistical problems of the age by establishing storehouses of arms and ammunition throughout the realm. Louis XIV furthered the practice of relying on professional administrators to supervise the main departments of state and offer advice on matters of policy. He created a separation between countries and office holders, and largely excluded the nobility of the sword from the inner circles of government, which were composed of ministers of the departments and small councils that handled routine affairs. Within each department, ministers furthered the process of professionalization that led to the advancement of talented clerks, secretaries, and administrators. Louis XIV built on the institution of the intendant that Richelieu had developed with so much success. Intendants were now a permanent part of government, and their duties expanded from their early responsibilities as coordinators and mediators into areas of policing and tax collection. The Court of Versailles. When the court and king moved there permanently in 1682, Versailles became the envy of this continent. Louis XIV attempted to tame the French nobles by requiring attendance at his court. He established a system of court etiquette so complex that a constant study was necessary to prevent humiliation. During Louis's reign, France replaced Spain as the greatest nation in Europe. Massive royal patronage of art, science, and thought brought French culture to new heights. The French language replaced Latin as the universal European tongue. France was the richest and most populous European state, and Louis's absolute rule finally harnessed the resources to a single purpose. Louis XIV's greatest accomplishment of the absolute monarchy was France's rise to prominence in Europe, but his aggressive foreign policy ultimately bankrupted the crown, and his greatest error was to persecute the Huguenots. The existence of Huguenots, with their separate communities and distinct form of worship, seemed an effort to his authority. Louis allowed the persecution of Protestants. The Protestant churches were pulled down, conversions to Catholicism were brought with lure of immunities from taxation, and children were separated from their families to be brought up in Catholic churches. In 1685, Louis XIV revoked the Edict of Nantes, and all forms of Protestant worship were outlawed, and the ministers who were not hunted down and killed were forced into exile. Supporters of the monarchy celebrated the revocation of the Edict of Nantes as an act of piety. But the persecution of Huguenots was a social and political disaster for France. Against the politics, the Huguenots held firm to their beliefs, and there were more than 1 million French Protestants, which is the largest religious minority in any state. Huguenots simply started practicing their religion secretly and gradually replacing their numbers. No absolutism could succeed in eradicating religious beliefs. After Louis XIV, a delicate balance existed between the will of the king and the will of the state, a balance that could soon lead the continental powers into economic competition and military confrontation.